right, we good?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, again, I'm here as a part 2, if you will, to the AP African American Studies graduation requirement presentation. 2 weeks ago at the board meeting, we went through and was given a task by the board, and so I'd like to share what we have. I'll do a recap and a review of what we went through 2 weeks ago, share what other districts are doing, and talk a little bit about the content and curriculum. So if you recall, last time we were together, quickly went through the timeline of events. We started this work in February of 2025 and went through the process.
What page is that on? Page?
Should be after recap and review, right there. It's just stacked.
Oh, okay.
There's an animation, and so it's stacked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we did the timeline. I shared with the board the process we went through with the content experts. We went through every U.S. history standard, looking across the AP African American Studies curriculum. And I asked the staff, the committee members, to illustrate whether it meets, partially meets, or does not meet standard. And then there was an opportunity for some additional narrative. At the end of the committee shared that there are 73 total U.S. history standards. 36 of them are addressed in AP African American Studies, 10 partially are addressed, and 27 standards are not addressed in the AP African American Studies. Again, this was shared at the board meeting 2 weeks ago.
Can I ask you about that, the standards? To be, I guess, compliant with state regulations and education code, are we okay to have less than 73 standards addressed? Or is it a minimum of 50 standards to meet the requirements for state?
So the state identifies the state frameworks, what the expectations are, and then the standards in order to address those. And so the idea is that we're hitting those standards if we're going to use that to meet that graduation requirement.
So we're supposed to be teaching 73 standards for U.S. history.
So the 73 are all there's, I'll tell you right now. There are not 73 full standards. These are all substandards as well under big standards. And so the U.S. history standards are about, I want to say there are 16 overarching standards, and then there's substandards within those 16.
Thank you.
And so when I took the very first one is 11.1, that's founding, Constitution, Civil War, Reconstruction. You can see those substandards underneath. So 73 standards represents all of those substandards as well. The recommendation of the committee was to have AP African American Studies. They were good with it meeting the U.S. graduation requirement for Palm Springs Unified, with the caveat that we weave in and that we bring in World War I, World War II, and the Cold War. That's where we left it 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. From there, the ask was, what are other districts doing? When I shared the presentation, this was where we were at in terms of fact-finding on what other districts were doing. The orange illustrate I hadn't heard back from the district yet. The green illustrated that what I found was those 2 districts offer it for a U.S. history grad requirement. From the time that I gave you the presentation, I can already see you, board president. From the time that I shared this, I have now been able to get more information from other districts, and that's what you're looking at in front of you.
Oh, okay. So what are the districts that actually offer this course, U.S. Black History, and it meets the California U.S. History requirement for graduation?
So originally, Oceanside and San Francisco Unified. But in further review, San Francisco Unified actually offers it, or Oceanside actually offers it as an elective. San Francisco Unified is the one district that is the 11th grade grad requirement.
So, do you have anything here?
No, okay. Does Oceanside offer it as fulfilling the requirement for U.S. history?
No.
Does any,
San Francisco Unified.
that's the only one in the state?
Only one from my list here.
Okay,
I
then
tried
what
to-
else did you find? Okay,
So what I found was this is what fact-finding I was able to conduct, and this is what I was sharing with the board members. So I tried to go outside of Riverside County and go to other districts, and so this is what I found on these districts that are listed in front of you.
okay, so what are the districts?
It's only
Just San Francisco Unified offers it as U.S. history. The others either don't offer it or offer it as elective.
So again, is that the only school district in the state of California that offers it?
I can't unequivocally answer that. I can only say based on the districts that I found. But what I will share with the board is when you look at the UCCSU list, I tried to do some more fact-finding to see what other districts do. So when you go to the portal and you type in AP African American Studies, it looks something like this. This is just a screenshot of the various districts that offer it. When you click into it, like for example, when I click into that, this is what I see. And to answer your question, when I see 10, 11, 12, that's elective.
Okay. Mhm.
And so I didn't go through every single one on the portal, but I clicked on many of them. And when I see 10, 11, 12, it's elective because a U.S. history is an 11th grade grad requirement. So I can't unequivocally tell you in the state of California, but what I can tell you is most districts offer it as elective.
And so my question I have for you, if you can go back to the one in San Francisco. So with the only one in San Francisco that's doing it, do they have the caveat with the world history and the Cold War?
So at this moment, I reached out to San Francisco Unified to take a look and see if they would send me their course description and send me any information relative to how they address the course, and I do not have the answer to it.
And so with that being said, I think it's fine to have whatever, if you want to have the war or whatever inside of there. But my thing is this, on the college board as well, for the AP African American Studies, there's hundreds of scholars who have put in hours to produce a curriculum, correct? And so if they produced a curriculum that was fine enough to be able to pass and be able to have our students be able to pass this AP course that's recognized by colleges, why would we add something indifferent than what has already been put in place if the education has already been put in place already from other scholars? I know that we had a group that spent their time, which we definitely appreciate them spending their time and putting their effort into doing this. But why would we recreate the wheel when there's something already that's in place?
I think the approach that we're looking at is whether or not the students get the breadth and scope of the U.S. history standards as defined by the state of California. Nobody's questioning the rigor. Nobody's questioning the exposure for students and that academic rigor that they'll receive in preparation for college. The universities will recognize it for A purposes, for A through G purposes. But the question at this point is, will our students get the robust U.S. history standards through this course alone?
Well, if it's already been put in place, the answer has to be yes, because how could it not be if it was already put in place for that already?
When College Board created this course, they were not taking into consideration the California state standards for U.S. history. They were considering the 4 domains that are in the AP African American Studies, and they were ensuring that there was a rich context to that particular material, and that is the experience of Black African Americans through history.
And so wouldn't we want our students to be able, who's taking this course, to be able to pass? And wouldn't we be adding something else in there, take away from the time? Because I know that there's a breakdown with the AP.
Yes.
Anything that has to do with AP, there's a breakdown of the time frame and how long it takes in each one of the sessions. And it's set up exactly, and it's like a smash class stuff, and they move at a fast rate because I have my son in the AP classes. And so if they don't catch it, they will get left behind. And the whole purpose of having them in the AP is for them to be able to pass the exam, to be able to get the credits, to be able to get to college.
Yes.
Now, with adding something else extra in there, we are taking away from the time of getting them to pass the exam and pass what they're actually really there for.
I completely agree, and this was mentioned at the board presentation 2 weeks ago. Correct. Our goal in an AP class, any AP class, including AP African American Studies, is to prepare the student to pass that exam. We want them to get a qualifying score. Absolutely concur with you. And I think the ask was, if we were to add those, it may be that it would be at the conclusion, once the test has been administered, we may have to approach it in that way. Because you're right, the pacing, and that's one of the slides in here, the pacing is very
It's
rigorous.
very.
It's very in-depth, and so it may not sit naturally within the units as defined by College Board. Completely concur. And so we would have to bring in, if we were to add those standards as recommended by the committee, we would have to explore how would we do that without disrupting the pace.
Yeah, I don't.
And that would be the committee member, that charge with the committee members. But yes, completely concur.
Yeah, I don't.
It would be very difficult to weave it in because it is moving at such a pace. Yep. I completely concur.
And so you reached out to San Francisco, I believe, once,
tried.
twice, multiple times?
Twice and a phone call. It turns out that Matt is the director. He got moved into student services, and so he put me in touch with the assistant superintendent, and at this point I have not heard back from the assistant superintendent of educational services.
Okay, thank you.
This might seem like something that I'm not so knowledgeable about is ethnic studies. Do we have separate courses, just by the way, that are ethnic studies AP and do satisfy the requirement for history at this time?
No, ethnic studies is an elective course. It meets the G requirement.
Okay.
So just to make sure we understand, a course that satisfies an A to G requirement may not satisfy the graduation requirement.
That's correct.
So we're talking about A to G, and then you're talking about high school graduation requirements. So
That's
it's two
correct.
different things.
Correct.
Okay.
I did want to take a look at what Los Angeles Unified has in Santa Clara. Again, I wanted to look outside of Riverside County and see what other districts were doing. You can see that it's elective and not offered. I was beginning to explain, this was a way for me, board president, to see what other districts are doing without calling and emailing. And so that's where I started. I started to take a look, and again, to reiterate, when I see 10, 11, 12, that indicates it's an elective. And the reason why we make that determination is because, as I shared, Riverside County and then other districts. But the reason why I share that is because some of the resources that were shared through the superintendent's office, one of which was an AP African American Studies. This describes what the exam looks like. And to Board Member Irvin's point, it's very rigorous, and this is the target. This is what we're looking for. We want to prepare our students to be successful on this exam. And so you could see here what our students will be faced with on the exam. It's rigorous. The other thing I wanted to share with the group is the at a glance, so that we could see what the approximate number of class periods College Board has defined to ensure that we hit those topics. And so you can see here, Unit 1, I mentioned before that this class is broken down into 4 units. And so Unit 1, you could see there's approximately 18 class periods. Unit 2, you could see this. Unit 3, and then Unit 4. So I just wanted to illustrate to the board the number of periods it would take to go through those units thoroughly, so we're preparing our students.
Do we have a pacing schedule or plan for the U.S. History Department? And if there is a plan, who is it that helps to keep people on those benchmark times and dates? I'm just curious.
We do have a scope and sequence for our U.S. history class. We do have common formative assessments that are tied to that. And so in terms of the accountability and monitoring, the expectation is our teachers are engaging in those common formative assessments. And that's a way for us to take a look at how our students are doing on those standards being covered for that common formative assessment. So we have three.
And there are department chairs that monitor, or I know you are there, but there's other site-based people that.
Yes, so we have department leads at the high school that help to support the department. We do PD at the district office. That's another element in which we have conversations around those standards that are pre-identified in the scope and sequence, and we do PD around them. So that's another mechanism. And then thirdly, through our PLC process, we're asking assistant principals to support those departments that they oversee. And so during PLC, that's another way in which we're monitoring progress on scope and sequence.
And are there 4 PLCs a month, or a staff meeting PLC, staff PLC?
It varies. It varies by site to site. However, there is anywhere from 2 to 4, depending on the site. But yes, there is opportunities for PLCs.
There's nothing in the union contract that says there should be 2 PLCs a month that we know of.
No.
I was going to say that it's not that defined.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to share, and this is what I wanted to illustrate to
Real quick, Deanna, before you go on, sorry.
Of course,
I was looking
yes.
at Unit 4,
Yes.
and I seen something on here that says that there's a unit that has World War
Yes.
history on here.
So, yes, so I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to come to your question. In Unit 3, the Cold War is semi-addressed. In Unit 4 is where some of the World War standards are addressed. So it is approached, but not to the depth that is outlined in the frameworks, in the standards. So the committee members recognize that it is approached, but not taught to the depth of that particular standard. So remember, there are partially met standards. So on those substandards, so they're partially met. So the committee recognized that there are some of the U.S. history standards that are met in the content. I wanted to share with the board members the frameworks, and you could see here that the state defines U.S. history as 11th grade. So Board President Cornett, as I said, 10, 11, 12 would indicate that it's elective because the state defines U.S. history as an 11th grade class. And then I wanted to share, these are the standards. So Board Member Jarrell, this is the whole standard, and you could see the substandards underneath, and that was the attachment that I shared with the board. I wanted to share just the last questions. The committee work, when we went through this, we talked about using this as just a marker for conversation. This was just a data set for us to have conversation. And so I wanted to share with the board, the last questions you can see here is, where does AP African American Study align? Where are the most significant gaps? What supplemental pieces do we need? And then what is their own personal thought on whether or not it should meet the U.S. history? And that's the 5th attachment to the email that was shared for the board. And so these are just snapshots of what you already have in the packet. And so you could see,
Small.
yeah, it was in the attachment with emails. I'm happy to reshare it again. This was just more for reference, but you all have each one of these grids on its own paper, and so hopefully you're able to see, but happy to reshare. And so those are the 5 committee members. And so at this point, what we're looking for is AP African American Studies as an elective graduation requirement, AP African American Studies as a U.S. history graduation requirement with the missing standards as recommended by the committee members. Or a third option would be AP African American Studies as a U.S. history grad requirement with no additions. And I'm going to lead us to the last is, at the conclusion of the board presentation 2 weeks ago, I had shared with the board member, or board and cabinet, if AP African American Studies continues as an elective credit, it'll be available to 10th, 11th, 12th. It'll continue to meet the A minimal entry requirement for UCCSU. No changes in synergy, no changes in the course catalog. If the board decides to make it a U.S. history graduation requirement with the missing standards or with no additions, either we'll take a look and we'll make some modifications in our student information system. We'll make changes on the course catalog as well as the course selection form. And what we will have to do is we will have to market that out to our students, because at this time, we have already started the course selection process. And so we would market that to students so that they understood that this will now meet the graduation requirement if the board elects to make it a U.S. history grad requirement.
If we went with option 2, it says African American history as a U.S. history graduation requirement with the missing standards added. Does that mean that it will meet the California requirement for graduation?
That's a local LEA decision. It allows us as the local LEA to make that determination. Our content experts would want to see those missing standards in, so they would feel good about meeting those predefined U.S. history standards.
So California allows each LEA to determine whether or not a course meets the California standards for graduation?
We can make that determination if we believe that does in fact meet the criteria as defined by the state of California. We can make that determination locally.
How could we do that now until we see what's been added?
And who is the we?
The board,
Oh.
the district, the governing board, our governance. I would need to convene the content experts together to see where these standards would fit, and to what extent.
And can that be done to allow us to have it offered for next school year or not?
If we were to engage in that work, I would want to begin the process quickly, and I would like to have it buttoned up by December so that we are prepared and that we can put it on the course selection sheet properly. And so course selections begin in February, so we'd want this to be completed prior to winter break, so we're ready for course selections, but it would be for 27, 28.
Other questions?
Yeah, I would ask you, as board president, or just the board in general, why would we prove it with the missing standards when these standards hasn't applied to the only school district that we have? And we don't know that. So we don't know that. 2, if it was good enough to get to this point and good enough for that district, I don't understand why we would add something in that, necessarily doesn't need to be in, if that makes sense. I mean, I haven't heard anything yet. We've been waiting. We got this before, we waited. We still haven't found out anything yet. We have questions again. We still don't know how much should be put in there. We're waiting again, and we're going to approve something on waiting to find out what that is, and then we still determine if that's enough to be suitable. Why would we do all of that when we have something that's already put in place, already ready to go, and we don't have to wait and have any questions? That's my question.
May I add something, Dr. Killian? So I think Board Member Urban is referring to San Francisco Unified, but we don't know exactly what their scope and sequence of the course looks like. They could have made the determination to move forward without the additional standards or not. We don't know that yet.
Correct.
And how
We can.
does that impact our students if some universities don't accept?
So,
Not only graduation, but what about higher education? Is this will be acceptable?
so AP African American Studies would, for entrance purposes, for A through G minimum entrance purposes, it is recognized as meeting the A U.S. history grad, or not grad, excuse me, U.S. history requirement. Once they get a qualifying score and it goes to post-secondaries, each university will apply their own entrance. However, most likely it'll fall into an elective and not into the history bucket. So universities can apply the credit on a qualifying score depending on student major, depending on the university policy. So once they get a qualifying score, the university applies their own metric as to where it'll fall.
So would the missing standards have anything to do with that? Would that play into that role?
No.
No, no, no. But in answer to your question, Board Member Irvin, the standards that we would approach are those 27 standards that were not met. So that would be the starting point of the committee, should we engage in that work.
And those 27 that you're speaking of is exactly what's in the curriculum and what's on the College Board, correct?
That's what's defined by the state of California for U.S. history.
But what I'm saying is, so the AP course, all the information is different from what we currently had, right?
The AP course is developed by College Board. They didn't build it based on our state. They built it to meet the rigors and the depth and the content that they were hoping to engage students in. But it's a national program. College Board is a national program. So they didn't build it in alignment with California. It's a national program.
Is there any other
I
comments?
apologize, I was late. Okay, so if it's not aligned with California, what do we need to do to make this class aligned with California?
So the committee members recommended that they would be okay with this meeting the U.S. history grad requirement for Palm Springs Unified if we added World War I, World War II, Cold War. They felt that the AP African American Studies did not hit those areas enough. And so there are 27 standards that the committee identified, substandards that are not addressed in the AP African American Studies course.
And I guess the only negative connotation or ramification of that is that this would be offered at a later time.
That's what we were talking about. The course is designed pretty rigorous, and we have and I believe you brought it up at the last board meeting as well, is the content and the pacing is predefined by College Board. It's pretty rigorous. And so what we're looking at, and I would certainly lean in on the content experts, but what we're looking at is this will probably happen post-assessment. We would take the AP African American Studies exam because that's our ultimate goal. We want students, scholars to reach that qualifying score and then approach the standards.
Why would we do that?
What time of the year does the AP class exam?
AP African American Studies is the first week in May.
So the rest of the courses would have to be
It's about 3 weeks.
about 3 weeks.
Because seniors, if they're juniors, probably 4 weeks if they're juniors.
So the question is, again, so how much time will the students actually have to go through the Cold War, the World War I and II, if you're going all the way until May to have them to reach the standards? How many actual days will we have in school? So it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't make sense to me to add something in that isn't needed. You know, I know that our committees spent their time and had this idea of what they thought was great, but it doesn't, what is the purpose?
I guess the purpose is to meet the California requirements for graduation.
But that is subject to us. Isn't that what you said? It's subject to us as a board to make that determination?
So we as an LEA can make that determination. However, most of our courses align to the state frameworks. That is our guidance. That is our guiding framework. So the standards and the frameworks are the guiding mechanisms for our courses.
I have no problem approving this course as meeting the California U.S. history requirement for graduation. But I do think we should follow the framework, and I do think we should add the additional thing after in May,
Why?
because then we would meet the California standards.
And that,
We would,
it's important that they learn about that history, that U.S., part of U.S. history?
it's inside of there already. It's just not to the standard of what the committee deemed as acceptable. It's the history is still in there.
We've got people who teach this, and they feel strongly that it's important. Shouldn't we take that into consideration?
So they feel it's important. And so if they feel it's important and we're only going to get it at the end of May, or because when is the AP exam? May 15th or somewhere around there?
No, it's the first week in May.
Okay, so the first week of May. How many actual school days do we have after May? Does anybody know? After May 1st?
After the first week, probably 15?
Okay.
15 to 19 days.
So a week on
15
each of
days.
those subjects?
In 15 days, how are we going to really give it the attention that it needs in 15 days?
You know, I'm not the content expert, and they apparently feel they can do it.
But with them feeling that they can do it, we have now been waiting for information to about how much of the Cold War, the World War I and II, is going to be in there. We still haven't got it. We still haven't got any of the stuff that we need to be able to say, you know, what it is or what it's going to look like or how much of it's going to be in there. And now we're at the point to now where we're going to say that after May 1st, we're going to address that. Well, how long does it normally take to go through World War I and II and III?
I don't know. I don't teach it.
But we don't have those answers. So we're going to approve something that we don't have an answer to.
I'd like to put in that we've identified 27 standards. It takes time to do this. The sense of urgency is because we're doing course selections now. So I want to put that out there. It would take time for us to take a look and see the percentage of. And as we said, and Dr. Kovac mentioned, we wanted to bring this back so that we can make a decision in a timely manner so that we can inform our students. We're doing course selections now. In fact, at this point, we're targeting and working with our underclassmen at this point. So even at this juncture, we would bring in our upperclassmen to re-engage them in the conversation based on the decision of the board.
Pardon me, have you looked into Stockton Unified School District in the Central Valley? Because I read that one of the first districts in California to allow students to take ethnic studies courses, including African American studies, as an alternative way to complete the U.S. history requirement. It goes on to say, students can choose courses such as African American studies, Mexican American studies, Native American studies, Asian American studies, and these still meet U.S. history standards, but through a specific community perspective. Have you seen their frameworks or any of their work?
I have not seen Stockton's, no.
Because they're the first in California to do this, to make this important change.
So we do have, of the 29 districts I did investigate, 14 of them meet the elective, 13 do not offer, one offer it as ethnic studies, meeting the ethnic studies, and then one offers it as an 11th grade class.
There's more districts that offer it as ethnic studies. I just saw that, but
Well, I think
it's
ethnic
Stockton
studies
is
might be a little
is
different from
making
AP.
this
Correct.
alternative work, and maybe not right now for us, but maybe we would branch out to other types of studies.
So ethnic studies is a different requirement that was a California graduation requirement, ethnic studies. With this latest iteration of funding, that the fundings that were allocated to support the implementation of ethnic studies has put a pause on that grad requirement. But yes, Board Member Jarrell, that was a requirement for the state of California, ethnic studies, and AP African American Studies does meet that.
Yeah, but they went as far as Mexican American studies, Native American studies, Asian American studies, where students then we differentiate and follow our equity, I think our equity lead and I think promotion of helping students see a value in history and specific to their group. But you have to look maybe at them, Stockton.
Dr. Funches, Dr. Kovats, you guys are the experts I lean on. What do you think?
I'll give my opinion here shortly. I want to hear from Dr. Kovats, and then I think I may have a direction for us to consider.
Well, last year, the request was for us to determine how we could make AP African American Studies meet the U.S. history requirement. We have U.S. history in 11th grade. That's not going away. This is just be another course that students would have the opportunity to take. But I agree that we should add the missing standards if we're going to do that. But I understand what Board Member Urban is saying. It's at the end of the course. But to go ahead and just say that this is going to meet with no additions, I just want us to consider the impact on any of our students if they're looking at post-secondary courses. I mean, I was very pleased last year when it became an elective. It was Palm Springs High School who submitted the course. That's why it's AP African American. They didn't develop the curriculum. The College Board developed the curriculum. And then we have 2 other schools who actually are giving that course. I guess my concern is if it does meet the U.S. history graduation requirement and it's only 11th grade, we're going to have quite a few students who may not have the opportunity to take that course as well, which is why I think it's a positive that it's an elective. But I want the board to make that decision and then we can move forward.
Before we go on, just for clarification, it's either one or the other. We can't have both. The elective and the AP?
It'll fall into go ahead, Dr. Killen.
So if, for example, it's a U.S. history graduation requirement, and let's say, for example, a senior would like to take it, it would count as elective on their transcript. It would fall into the elective bucket. Sophomores will be taking world history as defined by the state. So now, I'm sorry, excuse me real quick.
Well,
So,
10 and 11, 10 can take it, right?
They could if it's elective, but they'll be taking it concurrently with world history.
But my question is, it's all or nothing, I guess? I mean, the 10th grader can't, if we do the AP African American Studies for U.S. history credit, a 10th grader won't be able to take it as an elective? We won't have that class too?
The concern would be that the student would take it, it would fill the U.S. history requirement or bucket, and then what will they take as a junior?
Well, imagine they could take the regular U.S. history class.
They could.
And just an FYI, John, it's a really strict course. It's a lot that goes into it. I don't know if the 10th grade students
Already?
will have enough time to be able to dive into it. And that's why I keep mentioning that with the AP. So when you're doing the AP, time is very important. And so you want to make sure that these students have everything that they need to be able to pass this test. So with that extra time that we are adding on something else, they could be doing review. They could be preparing more to take the exam for the AP exam. We're going to be cutting out a little bit of the time for them to be able to study with adding something in there that necessarily has not been added, or we don't know has been added somewhere else. And so overall goal of that is to make sure that our students pass with a 3 or better for the AP exam. And so that extra 15 days or 13 days could be review. It could be, more review, more time to study the curriculum, it's really strict, it's a lot of information, and as AP goes, there's no time to stop. So if it says you need to be here in March, you need to be there in order to keep and stay on pace to be able to have and be able to finish and be able to answer for that AP exam. And if you don't, you get behind and you won't have everything to complete that AP exam.
Okay, I'm missing something. I thought the AP exam was done in May.
First
So
week in May.
The rest of this would be added after the AP exam, not before.
Right, once the exam is over, there's no more content.
Once the exam is over, it's over.
Do we have the time frame that says how much time is allotted to review currently now?
For the exam,
Yes, so the curriculum that they have in place, when will the curriculum actually end? And how much time will the students have from that point to be able to study for that exam that's given on May?
there's some autonomy with the AP African American. With any AP course, there's autonomy with the instructor. They know where they need to get to ensure their students have all the content. And so that review looks and feels different at every school site and every AP class, and IB class for that. So they know when the assessment is. They know they have to have their students prepared for that assessment. And that's what they're backwards mapping out. What I shared with you at a glance was a suggested pacing to ensure that you're on track.
And I want to thank you all. It's been a good discussion. I think it was necessary. We want to make sure that we honor our time and get to a different place tonight so we can move forward. And I'll make a few statements. Number one, I think it's important to honor the work that our content experts have done. They gave us a few recommendations for us to consider. I think that's important. We also want to make sure that we provide direction to the board to make an excellent decision around this topic for what's in the best interest of our students. And with that being said, here's my thoughts. So if you look at number 3, African American Studies as a U.S. history graduation requirement with no additions. If we went down that road, which is definitely something the board can do, but to honor the work of our content experts, is that something that we can do now and then for next year, take a look at those U.S. content standards, right? Use this particular year coming up to approve the African American Studies course as a U.S. history graduation requirement with no additions, with the caveat that we will introduce those standards in the year after this year. That would allow us to move forward right now with what we've been talking about as a U.S. history graduation requirement. However, those standards are important. They're important for U.S. history. They're important in the California standards framework. But that might be an option for us to consider tonight so that we can move forward. Make sense?
That sounds reasonable, that we would approve it for next year. Is that what you're saying, as the U.S. history graduation requirement with no additions for next year?
With no additions for this year, and that gives us the opportunity to talk to our students about this course and let them know, hey, this is what this course entails, and here are the U.S. history standards that it may not have in there, and they can make an informed decision. And then moving forward the next year, we will work with our teams to incorporate those standards in that course.
Can we make it the caveat that we will possibly include specific standards for future coursework, so that, the will part, is that, really necessary? We will include those standards as it unfolds, right?
Yeah, and I think that decision tonight would give us time to work through those recommendations, and so that we can add these standards effectively, if you will. So that's my recommendation, based on everything that we've heard here tonight, to honor the work that our teams have done, but also give our scholars the best opportunity to make a decision about the course that they want to take.
I would also like to, if that is the direction that the board is planning on going, I would like to also see that as a board before we implement it. So I would like to see that.
Yeah.
If that's what we're doing, I would like to see what is being added. I would also like to know from the year that we've put it in place, how they're going with the pace, how the students are having time, and what are the results and what are some of the scores that we're receiving from our students.
Future presentation?
Yes.
In a future presentation?
Yeah, we're very excited about this first inaugural year and our first group of students that are taking this course and the exam they're going to take in the first week of May. Happy to report out on how our students fared, for sure.
And also,
And see the course with the additional standards as defined by our committee members
for the board.
to the AP African American Studies
No,
course.
for the board to be able to see.
Yes, the board, absolutely, the board.
Mr. Spiriqueta?
Yes, okay. Yeah, and you know, that the Dr. Funch say, and change, when we say about the board, also we have to consider the students, at least the student, I don't know about the parents, in this decision that we take. And, yep, I'm supporting to move it, but carefully, little by little. Yeah.
I just want to say quickly before, and then we can wrap it up. I just want to say I appreciate all of the time, the effort that everybody's put into this. It's a great thing. It's something that I care about. Obviously, you guys can see I'm passionate about it. So I'm happy about all of the work that they put in. I understand all of the different nuances and the different things that were put into place. I just would have liked to have a little bit more of an answer. And I just want to tell them out there, if anyone's listening, any of those teachers who were in that meeting, I appreciate them for giving up their time. I appreciate the work that they did, and I just look forward to this moving forward.
Okay, so what I guess we're moving for, seeking approval, is that number 3 would be the African American Studies as a U.S. history graduation requirement with the additional standards being included.
No, that's not.
Next year,
No.
a year from now. In the 27, 28 school year?
No.
That's okay.
For the 26-27 school years as is,
As
and our
is.
scholars would know that.
With no,
It'd be communicated,
But
That
they
would
would
be
be included
communicated.
in the 27, 28.
correct.
Okay.
And then,
Everybody agree with that?
what about all the other different caveat things that we put in place? Will we put that as well into there?
Excuse me?
All of the different things that we talked about before, like the bringing it to us, the different, the other different couple of things that we talked about, being able to see.
You want to see the added standards where it is, and you want to
Yes.
see the pacing and where
Yes.
students have the ability to review prior to the
Yes.
exam.
Yes.
And this direction or any direction that we take now had to be also approved in the general session? No?
I'll have to defer.
This is the final.
Isn't it a change of course? So would we have to approve it as it comes? Usually we approve new courses,
yes.
so it would come for a vote, a regular vote during action items, I would assume.
But this one is
or-
as is, so we wouldn't have to approve that. However, meeting the
Graduation requirement.
graduation requirement.
So does that mean at the next?
The board is deciding that the course as is will meet the U.S. history graduation requirement for 26, 27 without the additions.
That's what we're approving.
Mhm.
I would just hope, I just have to say this as an educator, that as a board, I would hope that in the future that we really follow California state standards. That's what they're there for, and that we do approve a coursework that does actually meet those standards. And I can see that right now we're coming to a point where it's kind of at, we need to make a decision. So I'm okay with this, but I would hate to see in the future that we approve courses that don't meet California state standards. I think you're going down a path that I wouldn't want to take as a professional.
And I would like to say, I would like to make sure that when we are approving anything, whatever we are approving, that we have everything that we, in front of us to make a logical decision to where it's not up to us having to do that. I think that we should have a little bit more where we can bite our teeth on it, and where we can say, hey, I feel, strong and firm that moving forward, this is what I want to do. So I agree with what you're saying, but also as well, make sure that everything that we have here, it makes us to be able to do everything that we need to do as well.
Okay. Mr. Reynolds, do you have anything?
And just reflection, I think that we're all trying to do the right thing. And we're all trying to, do better in our work that we're doing. And seeing Fresno be the first and actually expand to other ethnic groups is amazing. And I so want to look them up. But you are right about we follow the letter of the law, we follow the state standards, and we follow also what's best for our students. And we also have our beliefs that this is something that's very close to us and part of our equity work. So I agree with number 3, African American Studies is a U.S. history graduation requirement with no additions. But I think, like you say, because it's a graduation requirement, we would add it to the agenda as a new course description or something to those. Is that right? Is that what we need to do? Yes, Will?
I don't know if that would mean the next board meeting. True, because it's not an action item right now.
Not right now, it's not.
And I'll say this, so whatever it takes to get this moving forward, we'll work through it, and that's the job of our team here, so we're committed to that. But we do hear you, Karen, that is my concern as well. Any course that we have needs to meet the California standards, right? So that's the commitment for 27, 28, with the caveat that our scholars that are taking this course this year, while we're doing that, they have a full understanding of the coursework and how it meets or what's missing in that course, okay? Thank you.
Any other discussion? Gratefully not. Well, now, if there's no further discussion, we'll commence to close session. Thank you.